What's going on, everyone? My name is Juan. I'm the OC agent here at Nationwide Real Estate Executives, and in today's video, I'm going to cover a topic that is on the minds of a lot of people, and that is whether or not we're headed towards a 2008 style recession that's about to crash the real estate market, and prices are going to start crumbling like they did back in 2008. Well, I'm here to tell you today why I don't believe that we're actually headed towards a major housing crash like we did in 2008. Now, let's not make no mistake about it. Things are changing. The market is changing, but is it crashing? Let's take a look at why I don't believe so. So, if you listen to the news lately, read an article or whatever, a newspaper maybe, if you're that type, and you hear that recession is imminent, housing is going to die, millions of foreclosures are coming because there's a ton of people in forbearance and the housing market is going to die. There's a housing bubble and it's going to be 2008 all over again, and the real estate market is going to die. Well, let's actually take a look at what a recession is and what typically happens during a recession. Do we always have, are the prices of real estate correlated to a recession? Let's take a look. So, but first let's start actually what recession actually is. How is it defined? Well, a recession is a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and individual activity are reduced, generally identified by a fall of GDP for 2 consecutive quarters. Well, it's no secret, if you've been paying attention to what's going on in the economy, that the first quarter of this year was already negative. We already have one negative quarter, and now that the government is trying to, or the Federal Reserve Bank actually is trying to lower inflation, they have one huge tool at their disposal, and that is raising rates. And they've been raising rates like crazy. So in a span of weeks, we saw interest rates for mortgages go up tremendously, and we saw the short-term rates go up as well. And when that happens, the economy actually slows down, and so it is very likely that we are going to see another negative quarter here coming up at the end of the quarter, and we're already more than likely in recession. So, but like I mentioned earlier, do we actually do prices for real estate actually correlated to a recession? Prices always go down when we're in recession. Well, if we take a look at the last 6 recessions that we had, we see that the prices aren't necessarily correlated with recession. Prices don't always drop. We've seen twice where prices have dropped, and that was in 2008 and 1991. And if you remember a little bit of what happened in 2008, you know that the recession was actually caused because of the real estate market and really because of lending practices during that time, and prices dropped tremendously. So the situation that we're in today is much different, and I know a lot of you guys are asking, is this actually like 2008 or is it something else? Well, I believe it's something else. Let's take a look at what actually happened in 2008. And we saw that in 2008, what caused the crash? Well, it started with good intentions. And if you have ever heard the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, well, in this case, it really is, right? So what happened in 1999, the Fannie Mae, they wanted to make it easier for anyone or more people to qualify for a mortgage. They wanted to make it more equal, more people qualify for a mortgage. And so what they did is that they decided to make it easier for people with less than perfect credit and less than adequate savings to qualify for a mortgage. And this is called subprime lending. So lending to people who are less than perfectly qualified for a loan. And so starting in 1999, we saw that the numbers of subprime mortgages skyrocketed. So we saw a ton of people like saying, hey, I can take advantage of this and buy a house now. Great, let me do that. And so a lot of people started taking advantage and buying a home then. And so then the banks decided, hey, we want to make it easier for people to borrow money too. So let's create a bunch of lending products that makes it easier for people to actually access the mortgages. In my opinion, and a lot of the products that came out during this time were actually kind of shady. It was almost like, and it probably was predatory lending. So one of the most popular tools that came out during that time for mortgages was an adjustable rate mortgage. Now, if you don't know what an adjustable rate mortgage is, it's basically they start you off with a fixed rate for a period of time, maybe like 5 years, and then after that it becomes variable terms on the rate, and if the rates are up, your rate goes up. And so what they did is they told a bunch of people, hey, don't worry, we're going to give you this teaser rate. Well, they didn't say teaser, I'm sure. The rate's a low rate for a period of 5 years. After that, it becomes variable, but don't worry, you'll probably be able to refi into something else during that time, and you'll be totally fine. So a lot of people actually took advantage of this type of loan. It was easier for them to pay. The monthly mortgage payments were probably a lot lower than they would have been otherwise, and so a lot of people took advantage of this type of loan, or were taken advantage of. I mean, to keep it real, probably was a lot of people were taken advantage of during that time. And there were also stated income, no verification of employment loans, 100% financing, which is pretty risky, no documentation loans. So basically during this time, if you came into a lender and you said, hey, I'm an owner of McDonald's, when you were really just a hamburger flipper, they would just take their pen, write it down, say, hey, you're an owner, and you make $300,000. Great, perfect. Here you go, sign here. Your loan is approved. And that's really what was happening. If you could fog a mirror in 2008, guess what? You were getting a mortgage, and a lot of people did. And so the other thing that was happening during this time too is that buyers, because there was a lot of demand for housing, and it was really kind of like fake demand, because the demand was created by opening up the doors to a lot of people who otherwise would not qualify for a mortgage, and all of those people came in and started buying homes, and in many cases they bought multiple homes because money was easy during that time. And so people started, the homes started appreciating a lot, prices went up drastically, and homeowners were like, hey, I have all this equity, let me buy a boat, let me buy motorcycles, let me go on expensive vacations, let me supplement my lifestyle, or maybe even some more speculative investments, and it's totally going to be fine because the prices are going to go up forever. Well, if you know the story of 2008, you know that prices did not go forever, because a lot of people who were in this subprime category already had less than perfect payment history and less than perfect credit and not a lot of savings, started to default on the mortgage, either because they were already in that 5-year period where the rate was variable and their prices had gone up, or their monthly mortgage payment had gone up, or they simply shouldn't have been qualified for their loan and they could no longer pay for it. So if you look at this graph here, the orange line was all of the delinquency rates starting with subprime ARM, the people that were in the category of mortgages that were variable rates. And so they started defaulting by the thousands, millions. People started not being able to pay those mortgages, but also the people that were subprime fixed. They were on a fixed mortgage, and they shouldn't have gotten a mortgage, and they could not make those payments, and they started to default. Well, what happened is then we started getting a lot of foreclosures hitting the market, demand started dropping, banks folded, the government had to step in. I mean, you guys know the story. It was pretty messy. And so because there were so many homes on foreclosure, people were just walking away from the homes. They're like, you know what? I can't make this payment. I can't even refi. I'm walking away. We had a ton of homes on the market, and we had little demand, so prices obviously dropped during that time. So let's take a look at what is different nowadays. I mean, are things different? What has changed? Is it the same thing as before? Well, let's take a look. Well, during that time when we had the crash, there was a lot of things change. A lot of things changed to make it harder for people to borrow money. The banks learned their lesson, people learned their lesson, and this graph on the left actually shows lending standards in the early part of 2008 and before that to now. And you can see the red one is product risk and the borrower risk is the blue line. And you can see that there was much more risk back in 2008 or the years leading up to 2008 than there is now. There's very little risk. There is some in there, but it's not like it was back in the day. Now, if we look at lending standards for credit scores, there's very little. This graph on the right actually, it represents lending standards or volume of loans in billions with credit score less than 620. Well, you can see that in the years leading up to 2008, there was a lot of people with this low credit scores that, payment history was spotty. And now you see that we're actually a lot lower than we used to be. It's nothing like back in 2008 when people were taking on these loans and there was a ton of risk in the market. Now, I mentioned earlier that there was a lot of foreclosures or refi cash outs as well. back in 2008. And if you look at this graph here, this is cash out refis, the difference between the in your payment, because obviously when you have a loan and you refi and you take cash out, now you have a higher amount that you owe and your monthly mortgage payment goes up. And you can see that in the years leading up to 2007, 2008, there was a lot of change in the monthly mortgage payment because people were refining, they were buying, supplementing their lifestyle and whatnot. And if you look at where we're at today, it's a lot different. It's almost negligible. There's not that much for people or refi cash outs, right? So there's a lot less risk there. Now, I know that a lot of people are saying, well, yeah, well, there's going to be a lot of foreclosures anyway because there's a lot of people in forbearance, and this is where we're at right now with foreclosures. Because I do get a lot of questions from buyers asking, hey, can you send me a list of houses in foreclosure? And here in Orange County, there's maybe 2 or 3 in the MLS. There's not a lot. Everything sells pretty quick. So we are, if we look at the 2020 and 2021 through quarter 3, we see that we are short by a lot when it comes to foreclosures. There's a lot of foreclosures missing from the real estate market. The average foreclosure from 2017 through 2019 is about 260 foreclosures every year. And right now we are 161,000 short in 2020 and 261,100 short in 2021. So we don't have a lot of foreclosures in the market. And I know you're saying, well, they're coming because they're all in forbearance. Well, let's take a look at what's going on with forbearance too. So in 2020, right, you remember, we all went into hiding in our houses. We couldn't leave, and a lot of people lost their jobs. So the government said, hey, you know what? Don't worry about it. For those of you who have a mortgage, we're going to allow you not to pay, and you can make up the payments at a later date. A lot of the times those payments were forgiven. And so, it was meant to give people some a breathing room while we went through this turmoil of the crisis that we were in. Well, a lot of people took forbearance because they simply didn't know what was going to happen. There was a lot of, uncertainty, and so they took the forbearance because they didn't know if they were going to lose their job. And some people just took it just to take it, to be honest. And so we had, in the beginning of 2020, we had about almost 5 million people in forbearance, and now we're less than 1 million. So a lot of people have actually exited forbearance, and there's a very little amount comparatively to where we started in forbearance. And if we look at what's happening when people are exiting forbearance, are they getting foreclosed on? Well, no. 38% of them have paid in full, like paid off the loan, and 43.7% work it out with their lender. So the bank doesn't want these. And 16.9% no loss mitigation plan. They're working on a plan with their bank to try to save the house so that they don't go into foreclosure. And some of these will actually foreclose, but it's not going to be 4.76 million people going into foreclosure in the next year. I mean, we're short a lot of these foreclosures because people are the small amount of people who are still in the forbearance. And I think when those people default, the foreclosure rates will go back to normal. And you'll probably hear in the news, oh, there's a huge spike in foreclosures, the market's going to crash. But in reality, it's just those people who were going to foreclose anyway coming back online and and going into foreclosure. Now, the other thing that's different in the market today is that we are short a lot of homes. Like, we haven't kept up with the building of homes since the 2008 crisis happened. A lot of people during the foreclosure, there was a lot of builders making these homes because they knew they could sell them. They were making money hand over fist. And then when we went into the foreclosure crisis, a lot of them stopped building. So, if we look at now where we're about 14 straight years below the 50-year average for homes. And if our population or the number of people who need to buy a home is increasing, because if we look at the population of people who are buying homes right now, there's a lot of millennials, like starting at age 24 through 42, they're getting married, they're having kids. All of these life changes are happening for them, or maybe they're buying their second home, they need more space. And so there's a huge number of people who are actually back in the market looking for a home, and there's simply not enough homes in general, not alone a lot of people are not selling. There's a lot of people who decided not to sell. They either staying in their home because they're like, hey, I don't want. There's a lot of turmoil in the market. I don't want to sell right now. Or they refied the last 2 years. They're comfortable with the mortgage payment, and they don't want to go back and find a more expensive house with a more or higher interest rate. So let's take a look at how this is translating into our local markets here in Orange County. Are prices dropping? Are we crashing here in Orange County? What's going on? Well, let's just put it out there. Like I said earlier, the market is changing. Things are changing in the market. It's not like we're still chugging along like were in 2020, 21, and in the beginning of this year, where it was ultra competitive. There was so many offers on the table. People had to go over $100,000 just to get an offer accepted. You had to go in clean with no repairs, no termite, nothing. It was just basically, almost having to pay the closing costs for the sellers in order to get your offer accepted. Well, things are changing. The market's slowing. Rates are up, and we know that that has had an effect on people. A lot of people are no longer able to qualify for a mortgage because as the rates go up, for every 1% of increase in the rates, there's a 10% drop in corresponding affordability. So if you qualified for $1 million and rates went up by 1%, you now qualify for a $900,000 home, and that's a huge difference. So that is having an effect. A lot of people have been driven out of the market. So that's causing inventory levels to rise, and it's causing demand to go down. But let's take a look at where we're at right now. So the orange line here is the expected market time. That's how we can tell if it's a seller's market or a buyer's market. If it takes longer to sell a house, then it's going to cause people to drop their prices in order to compete with the other houses on the market. And there's probably a buildup of inventory, and prices will come down. If houses are selling quick, it's a seller's market, and there's probably a lot of people looking for homes, and people are probably getting over asking in order to compete, and prices go up. Well, right now, if we look at the expected time on market, it's going up, but we're still in a hot seller's market. In order for us to go into a deep buyer's market, it would have to take 150 days to sell a house in order for you to be in a super buyer's market, which is not where we're headed. If we look at this, we're probably going to end up in a slight seller's market or a balanced market where neither the buyer nor the seller have the upper hand, and the sellers are going to have to be more agreeable to making repairs and negotiating things, but it's going to take a while for us to even get there. If we look at right now, we are at 44 days in Orange County, 44 days in LA County to sell a home. It used to be 30. Orange County is 35 days. It used to be 20. Riverside, 37 days from a 21-day sell price or sell time. San Bernardino is 46 days from 28, and San Diego is 31 from 18. So we are far, far away from even being a balanced market to being a 90-day time to sell a home. So I think we'll get there. It's just going to take some time, but this is no indication the prices are going to drop anytime soon. It's going to get a lot less competitive out there, and buyers are going to have an easier time getting their offers accepted. So, are prices, is the real estate market going to crash? I don't believe so anytime soon. Like I mentioned, prices, things are changing in the market. It's slower, it's less competitive, it's less crazy, because if you tried to buy a house in the early 2021 or like early this year, it was absolutely nuts, and it's just becoming more of a normal market. Less appreciation. Instead of 20%, you're going to see like 3%, and it's going to be a lot easier to get your offers accepted if you're a buyer. If you're a seller, don't overprice your house. I'm seeing a lot of people pricing their houses like they did back in 2021. And if you price your property too high, it's going to sit in the market, it's going to get stale, and it's going to be even harder for you to sell it. So just be careful, do your research, get with a good agent that knows the market, that understands what's going out there, so that you can make a great decision on the strategy to sell your house. Anyway, I hope that was helpful for you guys. I really appreciate you guys watching this channel, and tell me what you guys think. Do you think the prices are going to drop? Do you think the market's going to crash? Let me know down below in the comments what you guys think, and leave me a comment. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you guys on the next video.